Good evening and welcome to Greater Somerville for October 22nd, 2013. I'm Joe Lynch. My guest tonight is the newest lead reporter from the Somerville Journal, Monica Jimenez. Monica grew up in Massachusetts in the Acton and Bedford area. She attended college in New York, and after a year at the local Chelmsford Independent newspaper, she worked at the Arlington Advocate, where she currently resides in Arlington. A recipient of the New England Newspaper and Press Association's Rookie of the Year, as well as several other awards for her coverage of social and political stories, she now finds herself in a baptism by fire world here, covering one of the most interesting and exciting political seasons in years. I am pleased to welcome to the Greater Somerville set for the first time Monica Jimenez, lead reporter for the Somerville Journal.
Hi, everyone.
There you go. See, that was easy.
Yep.
You just kind of smile and you look great. You know what I did forget to do, though?
What?
And I don't know why, I just forgot to do it. I forgot to close the studio door.
Okay.
So I'm going to excuse myself.
All right, I'll be here.
If you want to take over the show, feel free.
Okay.
Go ahead. Excuse me, folks. I'll be right back.
Hi, everyone. So, as you've heard, I am the new reporter for the Somerville Journal. It is mostly me and my editor, Dan Atkinson, a couple of freelancers and interns sometimes, and of course, a columnist here and there.
Okay, that's enough, Monica. Thank you very much.
I'm done.
Cayenne will come looking for you if you try to edge in here. Now, I'm sorry about that. I forgot to close the door, and we're supposed to have the door locked.
Okay.
Only because only once in Scat TV's history has somebody tried to interrupt one of our live shows, so we don't like them hijacking our shows. Baptism by fire. I mean, give due credit. I mean, you are right in there in the middle of the political fray that is now called the 2013 Somerville elections.
Yep.
You want to talk about it first?
It's very confusing. Very busy. It's getting less confusing.
Yep.
I am really enjoying it. There's a diverse array of candidates. A lot of the different dynamics in the different races have been very interesting to learn, both by speaking with the candidates and by people like you and my editor, Dan, who are more familiar.
A lot of the folks who have been following politics for many, many years, yeah. The personalities are fascinating.
Oh, yeah.
The races are fascinating. Why someone would want to do it is fascinating. Yeah, I mean, you have to wonder it. You know, I mean, I tried it once, but it's fascinating why people would want to do it.
Yeah, I mean, here in Somerville, I guess, compared with the past towns I've covered, you get to get your hands on a broader range of things. You probably learn a lot while you're on the job, is what I'm always thinking when I'm interviewing people.
Sure,
so.
Sure. But I would tell you there's only 2 weeks left for the fun and games. So 2 weeks from tonight, folks, if you haven't registered to vote in the City of Somerville 2013 elections, you're too late. You're too late. Deadline, I think, was a week ago.
I think you're right.
I think it was a week ago. So you cannot vote if you're not registered. If you're unsure, call the elections department because Nick Salerno and his crew do a terrific job at trying to keep track of who's eligible and who's not. But 2 weeks from tonight, what are you going to be doing?
I will probably be bouncing between campaign parties, as I was doing during the preliminaries. So it's going to be a high adrenaline night probably for a lot of people. And I'll be on hand to talk to the winners and the losers as soon as the news is in.
Yep.
And then head back to the office after the parties start winding down a little, maybe to...
Somebody wants to, you know Kat Powers, and Kat told me that one of the more frenzied races years ago, she started at 5:45 in the morning covering the races, and I guess she had another reporter with her, but she was covering the races. They did not put that paper to bed the following Thursday. Well, you guys have a deadline.
We do, yes.
You have a deadline of that Wednesday morning. Mm-hmm. You have to have everything done.
We do, yes.
They did not sleep for almost 24 hours.
Ooh.
Right, because between covering Election Day, the parties that night, trying to get the newspaper in the bag for Wednesday morning, and then correcting anything that needed to be corrected afterwards. Good luck to you,
Oh, thanks.
Monica. And I would tell you,
It's definitely a full day effort.
it's
So.
you know it's fun. You know, we have a political bent on this show, and we love covering it. And I give every candidate kudos this year because there's not any candidate that I know of who just kind of threw their hat into the ring and said, "Let me be a spoiler." I think most of them are really actively working on it. You know, but
I agree.
given the constraints, you know, it's for me, it shows that people are still very, very interested in their community, especially when we see the voter turnout.
Oh yeah, I'm pretty excited to see how many people are going to be turning out
Yeah.
that day. But yeah, I've been noticing everybody who's running, you know, nobody's very lukewarm about it. Everyone has a clear idea of why they're running, what they want to do, and everyone's working really hard.
So let me ask you a question because they don't call it the hot set for nothing.
Okay.
Do you believe most of these guys?
Do I believe most of
Yeah.
them?
Do you believe the stuff that they put out there? Come on, Monica, you can tell
I like
me.
to give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, I know.
And definitely some of them, you know, personally, some of their messages resonate more with me than others. Not going to say anything about specific people.
Right,
But,
right.
I think, you know, we give everyone a fair chance to say what they're about and try not to let our own personal opinions get in the way of things.
Right, because you don't like people who wear turtlenecks. That's
Yes, maybe that would be one
There you
go-to.
go. There you go. So we're going to talk a little bit about your background. Why did you
Okay.
choose journalism?
It was kind of an accident, actually. I was hoping to go into creative writing, and then there was an opportunity for a paid internship at a newspaper, so I immediately joined my campus paper, started building a portfolio of clips, and then I just never left.
That was upstate New York?
Yeah, that's right, Skidmore College.
Skidmore, yeah.
And then, yeah, after I graduated college, then I got my first internship with the Chelmsford, I got my first job with the Chelmsford Independent, and it was, I didn't expect to be there very long, to be honest, but I kind of fell in love with Chelmsford. And with the job, I had some really great editors and teachers, and I just kind of was a big fan of the whole adrenaline and the whole steep learning curve that you get when you're a new reporter.
It's thrown into the deep end of the pool.
Definitely,
That's
yeah.
exactly what it is.
Yeah.
You know, sink or swim. Learn how to get your story.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, or you don't last. I mean, some people, I've seen a lot of new reporters just leave after a while, but
Right.
some people really take to it, so.
And then down to Arlington,
Mm-hmm.
our sister city.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Arlington was a pleasure to cover. It's really funny because they talk about how, you know, they're sort of a small town and area, but they've got a lot of people living there, so they're like, oh, we're really dense, we're really built out. So then I moved to, I start covering Somerville. It's like, oh my God, it's a smaller area with many, many more people living there. So it's an interesting shift.
You have to wonder sometimes, you know, when people, because we do focus on our own community. You know, we look at the folks in Arlington think that they're really densely populated.
Yep.
We look at Somerville, we think we're really densely populated. You go to Chelsea, they think they're really densely populated. So, you know, I'm not quite sure what jewel in the crown it means to be so densely populated.
It's a good thing and a bad thing, I think. Sometimes.
Sure, it's a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
So now you're here in Somerville. What do you think? First impressions, come on, Monica. You know, according to the bloggers out there, nobody watches my show anyway, so you can say whatever you want.
Say whatever I want. It's definitely my favorite community that I've covered so far, which is...
Score, Monica!
It's interesting because I've loved Chelmsford and Arlington so much, I didn't think there was a place that I could like even more, but it's such an interesting mix of between the crazy politics and like my first week I think we had a bank robbery and the next week we had a fire, and just there's so many more days when I have to drop everything and run out the door to cover something. I was a garbage truck in a sinkhole one day.
I saw that.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was first on the scene for that one. So definitely very lively and you're never bored. And at the same time, a lot of the people I meet are very welcoming. Like they can seem intimidating, especially if they're, you know, city officials or, but everyone has told me to not be intimidated by them. So it's kind of an interesting mix.
I'll give you some notes
Okay.
after the show. excuse me, about which ones are really pussycats.
All right.
Yeah. Actually, my assessment doesn't mean anything to the bloggers who think I only have 4 viewers, but the vast majority of the elected officials that I have met over the years, even before I left and then came back, they are hardworking people. We may not always agree with their decisions and the way that they do it, but the vast majority are good, hardworking people, and they're reasonable.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's that small percentage that you just know comes with the territory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you this, and I ask every media person who comes on the show the same question. What's going to happen to print media?
It really, to me, it varies depending on what editor I'm talking to. I'm still so new, having only been in the business a few years, that I'm not sure which direction it's going to go in. But the consensus, I guess, is that it's not going to go away entirely. There are some people who are always going to love picking up the paper copy of the newspaper and flipping through it. Although there's definitely going to need to be a shift to make sure that that's sustainable, that we can keep printing, because that's not what's paying all of our bills, the print product anymore.
Right.
But I still love it personally. I like to be able to pick it up Thursday morning and have a physical copy of what I've been working on.
Beautifully put, and it's the same nuance of how a lot of people in your industry are talking about it, is that you know that there is always a certain segment of the population who will like the tactile of print, whether it's magazines or newspapers or books or whatever, but the shift towards online is slowly but surely eroding the business model for that. So the advertisers are shifting to the online.
They are, yeah.
Right. It's going to be fascinating to see what happens, because I still reach for the Journal, the News, or what are they calling it this week? The Times, the Somerville News Online. I don't know what they're calling it these days, but that's a horse of a different color. But when I love magazines. I like looking at a magazine. I know that we're supposed to be sustainable, but the vast majority of products are being printed on recycled paper now anyway.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. I mean, there's a whole other thing about the ink and all that stuff, but I'm not knowledgeable about that. So somebody in your age group, though, I mean, do you ever read the newspaper other than your own? Do you pick up the Globe or the Times?
I
or the
do,
Post?
actually. I have
Really?
gotten, yes, just from, because I sometimes have breakfast with my old editors, and they'll always show up with a paper copy of, the Globe usually, or another one of our papers, and so I've just gotten into the habit of picking one up. So you're waiting for someone to come meet you for an interview, and you can sit there with your paper copy and kind of go through it. It's kind of comforting. So yeah, I still do read the paper.
And newspapers are easy to put under your arm than your laptop.
And you look cooler.
Yeah. Well, the ink still gets on
That's
the fingers.
true, yeah.
So, all right. So events, Somerville events. What do you think? There's this whole controversy about the city is spending too much money on events.
Yes.
What do you think about all of our events? Summer streets and private organizations, using our streets. What do you think of it?
There are definitely a lot more of them than I have seen in other communities. And I've heard both sides of it. I've heard people say, oh, the city thinks it's their job to entertain people, but I think they could be spending their money in better ways. And then I've heard people who say it's awesome because there's always something for me to do, and there's always something near me, and to get the kids out of the house. I personally, I guess from the Somerville residents themselves, I've heard more from people who really like them. Although recently at Honk I did run into, for the first time, a few disgruntled people who were thinking, this thing's too crowded and the lines are too long. And at some of the summer play events, drivers will be frustrated that they can't get off their street or on their street. So I guess, my view on it is that most people seem to think that it's a good thing, but that the city could probably stand to streamline the way things work a little bit more.
I heard it put in a very, very succinct way after last weekend with Honk and beer festivals and all the rest of it, that and it was very astute the way that this person put it, and I won't color it by saying male, female, age group, or any of that. if you go to these festivals, you love them. If you don't go to them, they're an annoyance.
Yep.
I thought, there it is in a nutshell. I mean, you know, if you're bringing the kids to something to entertain them for the afternoon, you really don't care about the traffic.
Right.
If you're trying to get to Market Basket on a Saturday afternoon and you didn't realize there was an event, it's an annoyance.
It's true, and they are very starkly divided groups. Like, you don't switch between them.
Right, right.
So.
Excuse me. I've been going to, you know, selected ones for many, many years. You have to plan your time. And if you didn't know about a certain event, I think the city does a pretty good job at notifying people of street closures and, you know,
They
where
do,
these
yes.
events are with reverse 911.
Mm-hmm.
Is it 9? No.
311.
311, sorry. Reverse 311. But, you know, there's a lot of people who don't connect to that, so they don't know,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, we had I think it was maybe a Summer Streets event recently. We had a cab driver go past a road barrier. So, yeah, he said he was just looking for a place to park because he was hungry.
Was our law enforcement people not too happy?
No, not very. There was a bicycle policeman
Yeah.
who had to chase him down and ended up falling off his bike, so he was not very happy.
All right, so hot set question number 2.
Okay.
First impressions of Somerville when you got here.
When I got here, as a reporter, or the first time that I ever came here?
You can answer it either way you
Okay.
want. Yeah.
Well, okay, the first time I ever came here, it was very. Okay, I was trying to drive from the south end to the north end, and my Google Maps thing was like giving me this little go straight, turn a little, and I go straight, turn a little, and go straight. So where is the direct route from one end? I did not know I was in Somerville at the
So
time.
how was Derry, New Hampshire?
It was very nice. No. But yes, the driving, and then the second time I got lost, you know, in the whole 93 McGrath area and could not figure out why somebody had designed such a place. And I was
Because
very
they
frustrated.
didn't. Because as most of the residents of Somerville have been here for a long time, and the joke is that Somerville was never designed. It grew.
That's true.
So it had its epicenter in the eastern part of the city, and then it just grew. There are certain parts of it that have grids. You know, people look at everything from, you know, say Walnut Street. So you got Walnut, School, Central, Lowell. A lot of that grid system were the north-south
Yes.
rangeways, but everything in between just kind of grew.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, hopefully, I mean, you cover a lot with community meetings as well, when you have residents going to meetings about development. Talk about development a little bit.
Oh boy. Well, that's definitely one of the things that every candidate for alderman talks to us about, and at community meetings, definitely one of the most heated topics for several reasons. I mean, I guess what has struck me is how consistent some themes are from meeting to meeting. Sometimes even when you have different projects that are being discussed and different residents at the meetings, many of them seem to feel a little bit upset that the city or the developer has not been open enough in the planning process. That seems to be the number one thing, actually, with development. And then also there's the theme of commercial versus residential development, which is something that I started hearing about in Arlington, but it sounds like Somerville is having a very difficult time with it as well. But how, you know, the tax burden is mostly on residential, so the city is trying to get more commercial to come in, but that's very difficult for a variety of reasons. And then they just talked about linkage fees, which could further scare developers off, but they need that for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to help keep the city affordable. So it seems there are so many factors that all tie into development, and it gets very complex. And, you know, you can support one aspect and not support another, and it just, you know, there's no easy way to look at it, I guess I've learned.
Perfect word to use for development in Somerville. It is complex. It's a very, very complex. I don't think it's a problem. I mean, I've heard many people talk about commercial development. My show, I give my opinion. The city has done a miserable job bringing in commercial development to try to offset the burden on the residents. miserable. I don't know why. I don't know how they operate internally in City Hall, whether they have one person whose job is bringing in commerce. I'm not talking small mom and pops coming into the commercial districts. I'm talking about the type of commercial industry that can come into this city to provide jobs. We just haven't done it. Residential, it seems as though the doors were flown wide open
Right.
to the residential developers. Come on in, there's a backyard over here on Lowell Street. Put up a 6-story building and put in 22 condos.
Well, that's what they want to build so often.
Right.
Is the thing.
It's much more profitable.
Yeah.
Right. It's profitable. They have the cash. They'll come in and do it.
Yeah, and they
So-
want to be in Somerville, whereas the commercial, I don't know how much commercial developers want to come in. It doesn't seem like it's as much as residential.
Well, if we haven't got a good transportation system,
That's
they're
true.
not going to come here
Right.
because they're not going to rely just on Somerville residents to fill their job positions. They have to rely on regional pull. So if there's no way to get there other than drive, people aren't going to drive from Quincy to Somerville
Right.
on the expressway to get to a high-tech job.
Right,
It's just not going to happen.
right.
So maybe Union Square, Innabelt, Brick Bottom, Assembly, maybe that's the answer to Somerville's ills. I don't know, but excuse me, a little frog there. So your impressions are, overall, we're a city on the move.
Yep.
We've got the same problems as a lot of other cities, small, mid-sized cities, that are trying to make it in this economy.
Definitely.
How about, when are you going to move here? Leave your sleepy little suburban city of Arlington.
You know, I never consider Arlington sleepy till moving to
It's not a
Somerville.
city, though, is it? It's a town.
It is a town. They're
Yeah.
very particular about that. They probably could be a city if they wanted to, but they like their
What's the
town being-
population? 50?
It's about 40, mid 40,000.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So they qualify.
Yeah. But no, they're determined to keep their town meeting form of government.
Now, what was the first question you asked about our form of government? Why do we stick to the word alderman?
That was certainly one of my top questions, yes.
Old English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know some other communities do it. I haven't noticed a pattern in which, and why some of them use aldermen and some don't.
Yeah, I think off the top of my head, I know Melrose has aldermen. I know, is it Methuen? I think Methuen has aldermen. We have aldermen.
Yes.
Yeah. It's just an old English term for. It was funny when they talked about it. They talked about it at the aldermen's meeting. And somebody had suggested, if you really want to keep up with the times, why are you holding on to this old name when you have males and females?
That's true.
Alderman is not the correct term. And alder basically means elder. It's an old term for elder. And we have people in their 20s on the board, 20s and 30s, so
Yep.
why
Yeah.
would you keep it?
I don't know.
Let's ask some of the older white men on the board why they want to keep it.
I'll do that next time I see one of them.
That's a good question for them during campaign season. See how they flop.
Aldermen.
I'll let you
I'll
ask
do
it.
that, yeah.
I'll let you ask it because
I'll
I'm
tell
an
you.
older white guy, but I'm not on the board. So, anything you want to talk about for this week's journal?
We've got an interesting feature on fire spinners and the subculture of fire performers in Somerville coming out on Thursday, so don't miss that. We've got some good art with it as well.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Endorsements. Somebody stopped me on my way in and said, when's the journal doing their endorsements? Is it this week or next week?
I believe it is this week.
This week,
Yes.
endorsements in the Somerville Journal. Woohoo! Speaking of endorsements, but we're not going to call them endorsements. Somebody asked me, they said, you've been Greater Somerville has been kind of low-key on the political scene this year. We did make the decision, I said this on the show before, we made the decision very early on that because there were so many candidates, because we only had so many Tuesdays, we couldn't have everybody on.
Right.
And because there were multiple ward races as well as school committee races, we couldn't do debates and be fair to everybody. So we just did our, let the candidates come in and do their 3-minute pitches. But next week, here on Greater Somerville, Cayenne and I will be doing our picks for all the races. So tune in next week, 7:30. So Somerville Journal this week, us next week.
Right.
What else we got going on? Anything? I hear you really have a nutty story coming out. Is that true?
Ooh, it possibly could be.
We'll say no more. Somerville Journal this week, there's an interesting article by one of the old white guys in the city who's talking about nuts. Nuts in the city. What can we do for you to make life easier in Somerville? As a reporter.
As a reporter.
Yeah.
Let's see. I like the early-ish meetings, so no complaints there.
No more meetings at 7:30, 8
No,
o'clock?
actually, that's been a nice thing about coming here. Let's see. More events with free food.
There you go. You know, it's a requirement when the Somerville Journal hires the reporter. They hire reporters that weigh about 70 pounds and can eat food. If everyone, I'm joking, because we talked before the show about Audie.
Yep.
Audie was I think she was one of the longest lasting reporters for the Somerville Journal. Audie was a legend, not only for her great reporting, but for the amount of food that woman could eat. Yeah, Audie is down in New Bedford. Audie, if you watch the show, hello. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me that you reporters love any place that has the food.
Yeah, I mean, it keeps us going. We're always on the run. We forget to eat, and we forget that we're hungry.
Right,
and then,
right. Well, you get used to it on election day. You're going to need a lot of stamina for election day.
A lot of coffee.
So I did ask your boss, I said, can I put her on the hot seat and ask her one question that she won't have the answer to? How's Atkinson as a boss?
You know, I told him if you asked me this, I'd just make a whole ton of stuff up, and he said the crazier the better.
There you go.
So.
There you go. You can say what you want about him. Monica, pleasure having you.
Thank you for
I've seen you multiple times across the city. We've only had one chat that lasted longer than 5 minutes because then you were off with your pad and you went to talk to somebody else. Yeah. So best wishes on the new job.
Thank you very much.
Not so new.
No,
You're
4 months now.
settling in. Yeah. Stay with us for a while.
I plan to.
All right. Good to have you.
Thanks. Good to be here.
That is it for tonight. So I want to thank my guest, Monica Jimenez from the Somerville Journal, lead reporter. Watch for the Somerville Journal this week. Endorsements for political candidates are coming out. And as I said, next week, Cayenne and I do our picks for political office. We also have an announcement. I think some of you may have seen it in the local media that Scat TV is now introducing its own TV news program, produced and directed by none other than Jane Regan. Some of you may remember her as the executive director here at Scat TV. Tune in next week, 7 o'clock, right here on Channel 3, Scat TV, Jane's premiere production of Somerville News. Let me get it right. Somerville News, a production of Somerville Community Access Television, Somerville's own TV news program. Thanks for tuning in. As always, stay safe, stay informed. We'll see you next week. Good night, everybody.